A 7-year-old orphan girl pressed her tiny body over 2 dying police officers, shielding them with nothing but her bones and her will. Blood soaked through her thin jacket. Rubble pressed down from every side. And when the killer's flashlight found her face in that collapsed mine shaft, she didn't run. She didn't scream. She picked up a rifle and swung. What happened next in that darkness beneath Blackstone Mountain would shatter an entire town's understanding of courage. Because sometimes the smallest hearts carry burdens that would crush grown men, and sometimes the forgotten ones become the only hope left. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. If this story moves you, please subscribe and stay until the very end. The trailer shook when the October wind hit it wrong, and tonight the wind hit it wrong every few minutes. Lily Morgan pulled her thin blanket tighter and listened to her grandmother cough in the next room. Each cough sounded wetter than the last. Each pause between them lasted longer. "Grandma, I'm all right, baby girl. Go back to sleep." But Lily hadn't been asleep. She'd been counting the seconds between coughs the way she used to count seconds between thunder and lightning when her parents were still alive. Back when counting meant something. Back when someone else did the worrying. Shadow lifted his head from the foot of her mattress. The German Shepherd mix had patches of gray around his muzzle now, and one ear that never stood up quite right since the day she'd found him. But his eyes were still sharp, still watching, still waiting for whatever came next. "I know, boy. I hear it too." Another cough. Longer this time. Then silence. Lily threw off the blanket and padded across the cold linoleum in bare feet. The trailer was small enough that 5 steps took her from her room to her grandmother's doorway. Margaret Morgan lay propped against 3 pillows, her face pale in the moonlight that leaked through the plastic-covered window. "Grandma, you need your medicine." "Took it already." "The new medicine. The one from Dr. Patterson." Margaret's laugh turned into another cough. "That medicine costs more than this trailer, sweetheart. We talked about this." They had talked about it. They'd talked about a lot of things in the 3 years since Lily came to live here. About why her parents' car went off that bridge. About why the insurance money disappeared so fast. About why Margaret's sister in Phoenix stopped returning calls when the medical bills started piling up. About what would happen to Lily when Margaret was gone. "I can get more herbs tomorrow," Lily said. "The ones that helped last week. They grow by the old mine road." "You stay away from that mountain, Lily. I mean it. But they helped. You said so yourself." "I said they tasted like something died in my teacup." "That's not the same as helping." Lily almost smiled. Almost. But then her grandmother started coughing again, and the sound was so deep, so rattling, that Shadow whimpered from the doorway. "Go back to bed, baby girl. Morning's coming whether we want it to or not." 12 miles away, Officer Daniel Cole checked his service weapon for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. His K9 partner Storm watched him from the back seat of the patrol vehicle, head tilted slightly, reading his handler's nervous energy the way only a dog could. "Yeah, I know. Something's off." Storm's ears perked forward. "Don't give me that look. I've got a bad feeling, that's all. Call it instinct." His partner, Marcus Webb, laughed from the driver's seat. "You've had a bad feeling about every call since I've known you, Danny. Remember that domestic disturbance last month? You were convinced we were walking into an ambush. The guy had a shotgun behind the door, which he used to shoot possums in his garden. His words, not mine." "Still a shotgun." Marcus shook his head but didn't push it. He'd worked with Daniel long enough to know that the younger officer's instincts were usually right even when they seemed paranoid. 3 years as partners had taught him that much. 3 years of Daniel checking corners twice, clearing rooms slower than protocol required, always expecting the worst. 3 years of never talking about why. In the back, Ranger Marcus's Belgian Malinois shifted position, his shoulder pressing against the cage that separated him from Storm. The 2 K9s had worked together almost as long as their handlers. They communicated in ways that humans couldn't quite understand. A look, a sound, a tension in the muscles that meant pay attention. Right now, both dogs were paying attention. "Dispatch said abandoned mine activity," Marcus said. "Probably just kids. Maybe some homeless folks looking for shelter. Dispatch said possible abandoned mine activity, based on an anonymous tip. You know what anonymous tips mean. Someone saw something they didn't want to report officially. Or someone wants us to see something. There's a difference. The patrol vehicle climbed the winding road toward Blackstone Ridge. The old mine had been closed for 20 years, ever since the collapse that killed 4 workers and bankrupted the company that owned it. Now, it sat like a wound in the mountainside, fenced off with warning signs that nobody read and chains that somebody kept cutting. Daniel had responded to calls up here before. Teenagers looking for a place to drink. Urban explorers with more curiosity than sense. Once a film student who thought the abandoned tunnels would make a perfect horror movie location. But tonight felt different. "Storm's restless," Daniel said. "Ranger too. They probably smell something. That's what I'm afraid of." The road ended at a gravel clearing surrounded by pine trees. The mine entrance loomed ahead, a dark mouth in the hillside that seemed to swallow the moonlight. The chain-link fence had been cut again, recently from the look of it. Daniel keyed his radio. "Unit 7 to dispatch. On scene at Blackstone Mine. Fence has been breached. Moving to investigate." Static. Then a voice. "Copy Unit 7. Backup is 40 minutes out. Advise you wait for negative dispatch. We'll do a perimeter check and report back." He clicked off before the dispatcher could argue. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. They both knew that waiting 40 minutes could mean losing whatever evidence might be inside. And Daniel Cole didn't wait well. "Leash them or let them work." "Work," Daniel said, "but close. I want them within sight at all times." They released the dogs from the vehicle. Storm immediately dropped his nose to the ground, moving in tight circles around the cut fence. Ranger ranged wider, checking the tree line, the shadows, the places where someone might hide. Storm's got something. The German shepherd had frozen his body rigid, his attention fixed on the mine entrance. Not a tracking posture, not a search posture, something else. Something that made the fur along his spine stand up. "Easy, boy. What do you smell?" Storm whined. It was a sound Daniel had only heard a handful of times in 5 years of working together. A sound that meant danger, and I don't like this, and please listen to me. "We should call for that backup," Marcus said quietly. "Yeah, we should." But Daniel was already moving toward the mine entrance, his flashlight cutting a pale beam through the darkness. Storm followed reluctantly, staying closer to his handler than usual, his body tense with unspoken warning. The smell hit them 30 feet inside the tunnel. Chemical, sharp, wrong. "What is that?" Marcus asked. "I don't know, but it's not mining equipment." They moved deeper. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber where the original miners had followed a vein of copper that ran out decades ago. Now the chamber held something else entirely. Crates, dozens of them, stacked in neat rows marked with shipping codes that didn't match any legitimate company. Daniel's flashlight beam caught the edge of one that had been left partially open. "Danny, look at this." Marcus was standing over a workbench covered in tools wires and something that looked terrifyingly familiar. A circuit board, a timer, a block of material that could have been modeling clay but wasn't. "That's a detonator assembly. I can see that. We need to get out, right now. Call the bomb squad, the ATF, everyone." But before either of them could move, a sound echoed through the chamber. A click, mechanical, final. "Too late for that, officers." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Speakers, Daniel realized. Hidden in the darkness. Someone had been watching them. Someone had been waiting. "You really should have taken that dispatcher's advice. 40 minutes is a long time, long enough for us to clean up and disappear. But you just had to be heroes, didn't you?" Storm was growling, now low and continuous. His body pressed against Daniel's leg. Ranger had moved to flank Marcus, teeth bared at shadows. "Who are you?" Daniel shouted into the darkness. "Show yourself." A laugh, cold and humorless. "I'm the man who's about to teach you a very important lesson about minding your own business. Don't worry, it won't hurt for long." The first explosion came from behind them, collapsing the tunnel entrance in a wall of rock and dust. The second came from above, bringing down support beams that had held for a century but couldn't hold against modern demolition charges. Daniel felt something hit his shoulder. then his head. Then the world turned sideways and kept turning until there was nothing but darkness and the distant sound of storm howling. The explosion woke Lily from a sleep she didn't remember falling into. She sat up in bed, heart pounding, not sure what she'd heard, but certain she'd heard something. The trailer was quiet now. Her grandmother's coughing had stopped. Outside, the wind had died down to nothing. But Shadow was standing at the door, rigid as stone, his damaged ear straining toward the mountain. "What is it, boy?" The dog didn't move, didn't look at her. Just stood there, staring at something she couldn't see, listening to something she couldn't hear. Then he started to whine. It was a sound Lily knew. She'd heard it once before, 3 years ago, when Shadow had found her crying behind the gas station in town. When he'd pressed his body against hers and made that same sound, that I understand sound, that you're not alone sound. But this was different. This wasn't comfort. This was fear. "Shadow, what's wrong?" The dog broke from his frozen stance and started scratching at the door, his nails leaving marks on the cheap aluminum. Lily had never seen him act like this. Not when the coyotes came too close to the trailer. Not when the thunderstorm shook the walls. Not even when her grandmother fell last month and couldn't get up for 3 hours. Okay, I'm coming." She pulled on her shoes, worn sneakers with holes near the toes, and grabbed her jacket from the hook by the door. Her grandmother's voice stopped her. "Lily, what's happening?" "Shadow needs to go out. I'll be right back." "It's the middle of the night." "I know, Grandma. I'll be careful." She was out the door before Margaret could argue. Shadow was already running, not toward the usual spots where he did his business, but toward the mountain, toward Blackstone Ridge. "Shadow, wait." But the dog didn't wait, and Lily, who had learned long ago that Shadow's instincts were better than hers, did the only thing she could do. She followed. The run took longer than she expected. Shadow didn't take the road. He cut through the forest, following some invisible path that only he could sense. Branches scratched Lily's arms. Rocks bit into her feet through the worn soles of her shoes. Twice she tripped and fell, scraping her palms on the rough ground. But she kept going, because Shadow kept going, and because somewhere in the back of her mind a voice was telling her that this was important, that whatever was at the end of this run mattered more than sleep or safety or even her grandmother's medicine. They emerged from the tree line near the old mine. Lily had been here before during the day, gathering the herbs that grew wild along the access road, but she'd never seen it like this. The fence was down, not cut, blown apart from the look of it, and the mine entrance was gone. Where there had been a dark opening in the hillside, now there was only rubble. Tons of rock and timber piled in a heap that blocked any view of what lay beyond. Shadow was at the edge of the rubble pile, digging furiously, whimpering with each pawful of dirt he displaced. "Shadow, stop. There's nothing there." But even as she said it, she heard something. A bark. Faint. Desperate. Coming from somewhere beneath the mountain of debris. Lily's blood went cold. "There's someone in there." Shadow kept digging. His paws were bleeding now, leaving dark smears on the rocks, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Something in that sound had activated an instinct older than training, older than domestication, a call from one of his own kind. Lily dropped to her knees beside him and started pulling at the rocks. They were too heavy, too many. Her small hands made no difference against the weight of the collapsed mountainside. "Help!" she screamed into the night. "Someone help!" But there was no one to hear. The nearest house was 3 miles away. The road was empty. The forest was silent, except for that bark, that desperate, fading bark that sounded like goodbye. "I'm coming," Lily whispered, though she didn't know who she was talking to. "Just hold on, please, hold on." Inside the collapsed chamber, Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness. His left leg was pinned under a beam that had fallen across the lower half of his body. His shoulder was dislocated, maybe broken. His head felt like it had been used as a drum, but he was alive. He was alive, and Storm was pressed against his side, whimpering softly, his warm breath the only comfort in the darkness. "Marcus." No answer. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Here. I'm here. You hurt. Can't feel my legs, Danny. I can't feel anything below my waist. Daniel closed his eyes. Tried to think. Tried to remember his training, the procedures for cave-in survival, the statistics about how long people could live trapped underground. The statistics weren't good. Ranger, he's here. His leg's broken, I think, but he's breathing. Storm's okay. Mostly. He's got some cuts, but he didn't finish the sentence. What was there to say? They were trapped under a mountain with no way out, no communication, and injuries that needed immediate medical attention they couldn't provide. That voice, Marcus said, on the speakers, before the explosion. I remember. He knew we were coming. This was a setup. I know. Danny, what did we walk into? Before Daniel could answer, Storm's head snapped up. The dog's ears rotated forward, focusing on something in the darkness beyond the rubble. Storm. What is it? The German Shepherd started barking. Not his alert bark or his tracking bark. Something different. Something urgent and hopeful and desperate all at once. There's nothing there, boy. No one's coming. But Storm kept barking, and then impossibly another sound joined his. Barking. From outside. From beyond the rubble. Oh my God, Marcus whispered. Someone's out there. Lily heard the answering bark and nearly cried with relief. Someone was alive in there. Someone with a dog. Hello, she shouted, pressing her mouth to a crack in the rubble. Can you hear me? A pause, then a voice weak and strained. Hello, who's there? My name is Lily. I'm just a kid. My dog heard your dog barking. Are you stuck? We're police officers. There's been a collapse. We're injured. Can you get help? Lily looked around at the empty forest, the abandoned road, the miles of darkness between here and anywhere. Help was at least half an hour away, even if she ran the whole way, and something in that voice told her that half an hour might be too long. I'm going to try something, she said. Just hold on. She started moving around the rubble pile, Shadow at her heels. The rocks were too big for her to move, the timber too heavy. But the collapse wasn't uniform. Here and there, gaps appeared where smaller stones had shifted, creating narrow channels that led deeper into the debris. Near the eastern edge of the pile, she found what she was looking for. A crack barely wider than her shoulders that seemed to go all the way through. No. The word came out before she could stop it. The thought of crawling into that darkness, into that crushing weight of rock and earth. But then she heard the dog bark again, weaker this time, more desperate. And Lily thought about Shadow, about the day she'd found him tied to a fence behind the gas station, abandoned and starving and scared. About how she'd untied that rope even though her hands were shaking. About how she'd brought him home even though her grandmother said they couldn't afford another mouth to feed. About how he'd looked at her with those eyes that said thank you, and I'll never leave you, and we're family now. Shadow, stay here. The dog whined, but didn't follow as Lily squeezed into the crack. Heck, the passage was worse than she'd imagined. The rocks pressed against her from both sides, scraping her arms and tearing her jacket. Dust filled her nose and mouth, making it hard to breathe. The darkness was so complete that she couldn't see her hands in front of her face, but she kept going, inch by inch, foot by foot, following the sound of that desperate barking until suddenly, impossibly, the passage opened up. She tumbled into a space that had been protected from the worst of the collapse. Her flashlight, she'd grabbed it without thinking, a habit from nights when the trailer's generator failed, cut a weak beam through the dust-filled air. Two men lay on the ground, both in police uniforms, both covered in blood and debris. And beside them, two dogs. One a German Shepherd with a sable coat lying protectively over the smaller of the two men. The other a Belgian Malinois, its leg bent at an unnatural angle, whimpering softly. Oh no, oh no, oh no. The German Shepherd lifted his head as she approached. His eyes were exhausted but alert, and he made a sound that might have been a greeting or a warning, or both. It's okay, boy. I'm here to help. I promise. She moved to the man the shepherd was protecting. Young, maybe late 20s, with blood matting his dark hair and one arm twisted beneath him. Hey, can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he just stared at her as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. You're a kid. I'm Lily. How did you get in here? Through a crack, on the outside. I squeezed through. He tried to sit up and gasped, falling back. My leg. I can't move my leg. Lily looked at the beam pinning him down. It was too heavy, much too heavy for her to lift. Just stay still. I'm going to check on your friend. She moved to the other officer. He was older, maybe early 30s, and his eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow and rapid, and when she touched his hand, it was cold. Marcus. His name is Marcus. Is he? He's alive, but he's not good. Daniel, she didn't know his name yet, but she'd learn it soon, closed his eyes. We need help. Real help. Radio. My radio. It's on my vest. Lily found the device clipped to his tactical vest. It was cracked, the screen dark, but when she pressed the button on the side, she heard static. It's working. Sort of. Give it to me. She placed the radio in his good hand. He raised it to his lips with visible effort. This is Officer Daniel Cole, Unit 7. We are trapped at Blackstone Mine following an explosion. 2 officers injured. Need immediate extraction and medical. Does anyone copy? Anyone static. Nothing but static. Then so faint she almost missed it. Unit breaking up. Location. Repeat. They heard us, Lily said. Maybe not. The signal's too weak. Daniel let the radio fall. How did you even find us? No one was supposed to be out here. My dog heard your dog. He led me here. Daniel looked at Storm, then back at Lily. Something passed across his face. Confusion, then gratitude, then something darker. Listen to me. Lily, right? You need to get out of here. What? No. I just got in. There are bad people out there. The men who did this. They might come back to make sure we're dead. You need to get out. Find somewhere safe, and tell someone what happened. Lily thought about the miles of dark forest between here and town, about her grandmother alone in the trailer, sick and worried, about the bad people Daniel mentioned, whoever they were. Then she thought about Storm still pressed against Daniel's side despite his own injuries, about Ranger whimpering in pain but still watching over Marcus, about the way those dogs looked at their humans with pure, unshakable loyalty. No. Lily. I said no, I'm not leaving you. Daniel stared at her. In the faint light of her flashlight, his face was pale and streaked with blood, and something else. Something that looked like the beginning of tears. You're 7 years old. I know. You can't help us. You can barely reach my radio. I'll find a way. Why would you risk your life for strangers? Lily looked at Storm, at those exhausted, loyal eyes, at the way he kept his body positioned between Daniel and the entrance, ready to defend his human, even when he could barely stand. Because that's what family does, she said quietly, and tonight, you're my family. Outside, Shadow stood guard at the crack in the rubble. His ears were raised, his nose testing the wind for any sign of danger. He smelled them before he heard them. Men. 3 of them. Moving through the forest with flashlights and the kind of careful silence that meant they didn't want to be noticed. Shadow dropped into a crouch, his lip curling back from his teeth. The men were getting closer. Inside the chamber, Lily had found a first aid kit on Daniel's belt. It wasn't much, some bandages, antiseptic wipes, a small bottle of pain medication, but it was something. Hold still. This might hurt. She'd cleaned the cut on Daniel's head as best she could, wrapping a bandage around it while he gritted his teeth against the pain. Now she was trying to figure out how to help Marcus, whose breathing was getting shallower by the minute. There's internal bleeding, Daniel said quietly. I can see it in his color. He needs surgery. How long? Hours, maybe, if we're lucky. Lily swallowed hard. What if we're not lucky? Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. Storm suddenly lifted his head, a low growl building in his throat. His attention was fixed on the crack Lily had crawled through his body, tensing like a coiled spring. "What is it, boy? What do you hear?" And then Lily heard it too. From outside, Shadows barked sharp, aggressive warning. "Someone's coming," she whispered. Daniel tried to reach for his service weapon, but it was pinned under debris. His backup piece was on his ankle, but his leg. "My gun. On my right ankle. Can you reach it?" Lily crawled to his leg, working her small hands under the beam until she felt metal. She pulled the pistol free, nearly dropping it from the unexpected weight. "Do you know how to use that?" "No." "Then give it to me." She placed the weapon in his hand. His grip was weak, his arm shaking, but his eyes were steady. "Hide. Behind that beam in the corner. Don't come out. No matter what you hear, don't come out." "But..." "Please, Lily, if they find you..." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Lily crawled to the spot he'd indicated, pressing herself into a crevice between two fallen beams. Storm tried to follow her, but Daniel held him back. "Stay with me, boy. I need you." The dog hesitated, then returned to his handler's side. In the darkness, his eyes reflected Lily's flashlight like twin points of gold. Outside, Shadow's barking reached a crescendo, then cut off with a sharp yelp. Lily pressed her hands over her mouth to keep from screaming. The three men reached the rubble pile to find a scruffy German Shepherd mix standing between them and the crack in the debris. The dog was growling, his body positioned to defend, his eyes locked on the lead man's flashlight. "Just a stray," one of them said. "Move it." The lead man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that had seen too many bad decisions, stepped forward. The dog lunged, teeth snapping at his leg. He kicked out, catching the animal in the ribs, sending it tumbling across the gravel. Shadow yelped, but got back up. Blood dripped from his lip. His legs were shaking, but he didn't run. "Persistent little mutt." The man raised his rifle. "I'll handle it." "Wait." The second man had found the crack. He shone his flashlight inside, illuminating a narrow passage that disappeared into darkness. "Someone's been through here. Recently." "What?" "Look. Scuff marks. Fresh. And..." He bent down, picked something up. A child's hair clip. The lead man's expression changed. One of them had a kid. Wouldn't make sense. Both units were solo, K9 handlers. He turned the clip over in his fingers. Someone else. Someone from outside. "Then we have a witness." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. "I'll go in," the third man said. He was smaller than the others, thin enough to fit through the passage. "Finish what we started." "And the dog?" The lead man looked at Shadow, who was still standing, still growling, still refusing to give ground. "Leave it. We've got bigger problems." Lily heard them before she saw them. Boots scraping against stone, heavy breathing, a flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. She pressed herself deeper into the crevice, making herself as small as possible. Beside Daniel, Storm's growl built to a continuous rumble. "Stay quiet," Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible. "Don't move." A man emerged from the passage, young, maybe mid-20s, with a thin face and nervous eyes. He held a rifle in trembling hands, sweeping it across the chamber until it found Daniel. "Well, look at you. Still alive. Who are you? What do you want?" "What I want doesn't matter. What my boss wants." He stepped closer, keeping the rifle trained on Daniel's chest. "He wants you dead. Both of you. Your boss killed 4 people in this mine 20 years ago. Buried them to cover up safety violations. Now he's using the tunnels for weapons storage. We know. We found the evidence. Evidence that will never see daylight, just like you." He raised the rifle. Storm exploded. The German Shepherd launched himself at the gunman despite his injuries, teeth finding the man's arm, dragging him down. The rifle went off, a deafening crack in the enclosed space, but the bullet went wide, sparking off the rock ceiling. "Get off! Get off me!" The man kicked and thrashed, trying to free himself from the dog's grip. Daniel raised his pistol, but his hand was shaking too badly to aim. And then from the shadows, a small figure moved. Lily didn't think, didn't plan. She just saw the rifle lying on the ground where the man had dropped it, and she saw Storm struggling to hold on, and she saw Daniel too weak to help. She grabbed the rifle by the barrel and swung. The stock connected with the back of the man's head with a sound like a watermelon hitting pavement. He went limp, instantly collapsing beneath Storm's weight. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Daniel let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. "Lily, I told you." Her voice was shaking. Her whole body was shaking. "I'm not leaving." So, outside, the other two men heard the gunshot. Then silence. "Carl!" the lead man called into the crack. "Report." Nothing. "Carl." "Maybe the cop got lucky," the second man said. "Had a weapon we didn't know about. Or maybe whoever went in before Carl came out ahead." The lead man's jaw tightened. "We wait. Dawn's in 3 hours. We'll seal this whole section and be done with it. And the witness? If they're still inside, they die with the cops. If they got out." He looked at Shadow, still standing guard, still bleeding, still refusing to give up. "That dog hasn't moved, hasn't run for help. Whoever went in there is still in there." They settled in to wait. Inside, Lily tied the unconscious man's hands with his own belt, the way she'd seen done in movies. It probably wasn't right, but it was something. "There are 2 more, she told Daniel. "Outside. Waiting." "I know." "What do we do?" Daniel looked at Marcus, whose breathing had become dangerously irregular. At Ranger, who had stopped whimpering and now lay ominously still. At Storm, bleeding from a dozen cuts, but still standing still ready. At Lily, 7 years old, who had already done more tonight than most people did in a lifetime. "We survive," he said, "until help comes." What if help doesn't come? He met her eyes. In the flashlight's dying beam, his face was gray with pain and blood loss, but his voice was steady. "Then we make our own help, somehow." Lily nodded. She didn't know how, didn't know if it was possible, but she knew one thing. She wasn't leaving this mine without them, all of them. The radio crackled. Both Lily and Daniel froze. Storm's ears perked forward. "Unit, repeat your coordinates. Unit 7, do you?" Daniel grabbed the radio with his good hand. "This is Unit 7. We are trapped at Blackstone, mine 2 officers down. There are hostiles at the entrance. We need immediate assistance." Static, more static, then clear as a church bell. "Unit 7, this is Sergeant Torres. Help is on the way. ETA 45 minutes. Can you hold?" 45 minutes. Lily looked at Marcus, barely breathing. Looked at the 2 men waiting outside. Looked at the crack in the wall that was the only way in or out. 45 minutes might as well have been 45 years. "We can hold," Daniel said into the radio, but his eyes told a different story. Lily sat down beside Storm and put her arms around the dog's neck. He leaned into her, warm and solid and real. "We're going to make it," she whispered. "All of us. I promise." Storm licked her face, and somewhere outside Shadow began to howl. The radio went silent again, and the silence felt heavier than the rubble pressing down around them. 45 minutes. Lily counted backward in her head, trying to make the number feel smaller. 45 minutes was how long it took her grandmother to fall asleep after her medicine kicked in. 45 minutes was nothing. But Marcus's breathing was getting worse. Each inhale came with a wet, rattling sound that made Storm's ears flatten against his skull. And outside, 2 men with guns were waiting for dawn. "Lily," Daniel's voice was weaker now, "I need you to do something. Anything. The man you hit. Check his pockets. He might have a phone, another radio, something." She crawled to the unconscious figure and started searching. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the fabric. In his jacket, she found a wallet, a pack of cigarettes, and something that made her heart skip. A phone. He has a phone. Does it work? She pressed the button. The screen lit up, showing 3 bars of signal and a battery at 60%. It works. It's locked, but it works. Try emergency call. Most phones let you dial 911 even when locked. Lily's fingers found the emergency button. She pressed it, held the phone to her ear, and listened to it ring. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. 911. What's your emergency? The voice was so normal, so calm that Lily almost started crying. There are police officers trapped in a mine. They're hurt really bad. There are bad men outside trying to kill us. Please, you have to help. Slow down, honey. Where are you? Blackstone mine on the ridge. Please hurry. One of the officers isn't breathing right and there's so much blood and... The line crackled, broke, went dead. Hello, hello. She looked at the screen. No signal. The 3 bars had vanished, replaced by a small X that meant nothing was getting through. The signal's gone. Mercy. Daniel closed his eyes. The mine. We're too deep. It must have been a fluke that it connected at all. But they heard me. They know where we are now. Maybe, if the call lasted long enough to trace. Lily stared at the dead phone in her hand. She'd been so close to getting them real help to ending this nightmare. And now the screen just showed her own reflection, small and scared and covered in dust. It's not your fault, Daniel said. I should have talked faster. You did everything right. You did more than anyone could ask. From the corner, Ranger made a sound. Not a whimper this time. Something worse. A long, slow exhale that seemed to go on forever. Marcus stirred. Ranger boy. The Belgian Malinois didn't respond, didn't move. His chest had stopped rising. No. Marcus tried to drag himself toward his partner, but his body wouldn't cooperate. No. Ranger, come on, boy. Stay with me. Lily scrambled to the dog's side. She pressed her hand against his chest, feeling for a heartbeat, finding nothing but stillness. He's not... I can't feel... CPR. Daniel's voice cracked. Do you know CPR? For dogs, it's... You compress the chest behind the front legs. She didn't know. She'd never learned. But she put her hands where Daniel described and started pushing, counting the way she'd seen on TV shows, not knowing if she was doing it right, only knowing that she had to try. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe. Storm crawled to her side and started licking Ranger's face, whining with each breath Lily forced into the other dog's lungs. Come on, she whispered. Please don't go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing. And then, just as her arms started to give out, Ranger coughed. His whole body convulsed. His legs kicked weakly. His eyes opened unfocused and confused, but open. Ranger. Marcus was crying now, tears cutting tracks through the blood and dust on his face. That's my boy. That's my good boy. Lily fell back her arms, burning her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Storm pressed against her, his tail wagging for the first time since they'd entered the mine. You saved him, Daniel said. Lily, you saved his life. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a 7-year-old who was way out of her depth and running on nothing but fear and stubbornness. But Ranger was breathing, and that was enough. For now. Outside, Shadow's howling had stopped. The silence that replaced it was somehow worse. Your dog, Daniel said. Is he... I don't know. Lily moved toward the crack in the wall, straining to hear anything from outside. Shadow, are you there? A bark. Weak, but there. He's alive. Those men. They're still out there. I know. If they come back, I'll be ready. Daniel looked at the rifle Lily had used as a club. It lay on the ground near the unconscious man within reach if she needed it. But the thought of actually shooting someone, of pulling that trigger and watching a person fall. Have you ever hurt anyone before tonight? He asked quietly. No. How do you feel? Lily considered the question. Her hands had stopped shaking, which surprised her. Her stomach wasn't churning anymore. She felt different, older, like something inside her had shifted and couldn't shift back. I feel like I'd do it again, she said. If I had to, if it meant keeping you safe. Daniel didn't respond. He just looked at her with an expression she couldn't read, something between sadness and wonder. Storm's head snapped toward the passage. His growl started low but built quickly, filling the chamber with a sound that raised the hair on the back of Lily's neck. "They're coming back." Daniel raised his pistol with a hand that trembled visibly. "Get behind me! You can barely hold that gun. Get behind me, Lily!" But she didn't move. Instead, she picked up the rifle, her small hands gripping the stock, the way she'd seen soldiers do in movies. It was heavier than she remembered, heavier and colder and more real than anything she'd ever held. "You don't have to do this," Daniel said. "Neither do you. But here we are." A voice echoed down the passage, different from before, deeper, angrier. "Carl, what's taken so long?" Lily's finger found the trigger guard. She didn't put her finger inside. Not yet, but she was ready. "Carl got hit by a little girl," Daniel called back, his voice stronger than Lily expected. "You want to be next." Silence. Then a laugh, cold and humorless. "A little girl. You're telling me Carl got taken down by a kid? Why don't you come in and find out?" More silence. Lily could hear them conferring, their voices too low to make out words. Storm's growl never wavered. "Here's how this is going to go, officer. We're going to wait out here until dawn. Then we're going to collapse this whole section of the mine. Every tunnel, every chamber, every crack big enough for a rat to squeeze through. You'll be buried so deep they'll need a decade to find your bones. And if I have evidence that links your boss to weapons trafficking evidence that's already been transmitted to my sergeant." The pause that followed was longer, heavier. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Why do you think we came here tonight? Random patrol. We had a tip, an informant, someone in your organization who's been feeding us information for months. Everything we saw in that chamber is already documented. Killing us doesn't change that." Lily watched Daniel's face as he spoke. His eyes were closed, his jaw tight with concentration. He was lying. She could tell, but his voice was steady, confident, certain. "Who?" the voice demanded. "Who's the informant? Come in and I'll tell you." "I don't think so." "Then I guess you'll have to explain to your boss why his whole operation is about to come crashing down. Because right now my sergeant is on her way here with backup, state police, FBI, anyone she could get on the phone. And when they arrive, they're going to find enough evidence to put everyone involved away for the rest of their lives. You're stalling. I'm giving you a chance. Walk away, disappear, take whatever money you've made, and start over somewhere else. Because if you're still here when that backup arrives, you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell." The silence stretched longer this time. Lily could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the rifle in her hands, could smell the blood and dust and fear that filled the chamber. Then footsteps, moving away. "This isn't over," the voice called back. "We'll be watching. The second that backup arrives, we'll know. And if you lied to us, then come back and finish the job. But right now, you've got a choice to make." The footsteps faded. Lily strained to hear them until they were gone completely. "Are they leaving?" she whispered. "Maybe. For now." Was any of that true about the informant? Daniel's eyes opened. He looked exhausted, drained, barely holding on. "No, there's no informant. No transmitted evidence. I just needed to buy us time." "How much time?" "I don't know. An hour. Maybe less." He let the pistol fall to his chest, lacking the strength to hold it up any longer. "When they figure out I was lying, they'll come back, and they won't hesitate next time." Lily set down the rifle and crawled to his side. Up close, she could see how pale he'd become, how much blood had soaked into his uniform, how hard he was fighting just to stay conscious. "Tell me about your daughters," she said. "What?" "Marcus. He mentioned he has daughters. Tell me about them." Daniel blinked, confused by the change of subject. I don't have..." "I know, but Marcus does. Wake him up. Make him tell me about them. It'll keep him conscious." Understanding dawned in Daniel's eyes. He reached over and shook his partner's shoulder. "Marcus. Hey. Marcus, wake up." "Tired. I know. But this little girl wants to hear about Emma and Sophie. Can you do that? Marcus's eyes fluttered. His voice was barely above a whisper. Emma's 8. Sophie's 5. Emma wants to be a veterinarian. Sophie wants to be a dinosaur. Lily smiled, despite everything. A dinosaur. She's very committed to the idea. Has a T-Rex costume she wears every day after school. My wife has to wash it every night, or she won't put it on the next morning. What's your wife's name? Rebecca. Marcus's voice grew slightly stronger, fed by the memory of someone he loved. We met in high school. She was the smart one. Still is. Works at the hospital. Pediatric nurse. She sounds nice. She's the best person I know. I don't deserve her. Yes, you do. Marcus turned his head to look at her. His eyes were clearer now, more focused. You're a strange kid, you know that. I've been told. How old are you? 7. My Sophie's 5. 2 years difference. He coughed, wincing at the pain it caused. She'd like you. She likes everyone, but she'd really like you. Maybe I can meet her. After this. I'd like that. She could show you her dinosaur impression. It's actually pretty good. Lily took his hand. His grip was weak, but it was there. Tell me more. About Rebecca. About your house. About everything. And Marcus did. His voice faded in and out, sometimes trailing off mid-sentence before picking back up again. But he kept talking. About his wife's terrible cooking, and his daughter's obsession with a cartoon about magical dogs. About the house they'd bought last year, and the tree in the backyard that he'd promised to build a tree house in, but never finished. About the way Rebecca looked at him every morning when he left for work like she was memorizing his face just in case. Lily listened to all of it. She didn't interrupt, didn't comment, just held his hand and let him talk. Because as long as he was talking, he was alive. And as long as he was alive, there was still hope. Storm had moved to lie beside Ranger, the 2 dogs pressed together for warmth and comfort. Their breathing had synchronized, rising and falling in rhythm. Every few minutes, Storm would lift his head and check on Daniel, then settle back down when he saw his handler still conscious. Lily. Daniel's voice cut through Marcus's rambling. I need to tell you something. What? 2 years ago, I responded to a car accident on Highway 7. When I got there, the vehicle was on fire. There was a child in the back seat, a girl about your age. Lily's hand tightened on Marcus's. What happened? I tried to get her out. The door was jammed, the window wouldn't break, and the flames... He paused, gathering himself. I couldn't reach her. I tried everything, but I couldn't reach her. She died looking right at me. Looking at me like I was supposed to save her. It wasn't your fault. Her name was Mia. She was 6 years old. She had a stuffed rabbit that her grandmother had given her. It burned with her. His voice broke. I see her face every night. Every single night. And I always think, what if I'd been faster? What if I'd tried harder? What if... Stop. Lily released Marcus's hand and moved to Daniel's side. You can't think like that. You can't live in what-ifs. How do you know? Because I do it too. What if my parents had taken a different road that night? What if they'd left 5 minutes later? What if I'd asked them to stay home? She put her hand on his chest, feeling his heart beat beneath her palm. It doesn't help. It just makes the pain worse. Daniel stared at her. You're 7. I'm 7 and I've been alone for 3 years. I know what guilt does to a person. It eats you up inside until there's nothing left. She leaned closer. You couldn't save Mia, but you can save yourself. You can save Marcus. You can go home and live the life that little girl didn't get to have. Lily, you don't get to give up. You don't get to let them win. Because if you die down here, then all of this was for nothing, and I won't let that happen. The sound of an engine cut through the air, distant but getting closer, then another engine, and another. Vehicles, Marcus breathed. Multiple vehicles. Backup. Daniel's eyes widened. That's backup. But Lily wasn't so sure. The engines were coming from 2 directions, some from the road, others from somewhere else. somewhere closer. Outside, Shadow started barking again, but this time his barking was different. Not aggressive, not warning, excited. Someone's here. Lily scrambled toward the passage. Someone else is here. Wait. Daniel tried to grab her arm but missed. It could be a trap. But she was already moving, squeezing back through the crack she'd entered hours ago, following the sound of her dog's voice. The passage felt shorter this time, or maybe she was just moving faster. Either way, she emerged into the cool night air within seconds. The first thing she saw was Shadowtail wagging furiously, his entire body vibrating with joy. The second thing she saw was the woman kneeling beside him, checking his wounds, speaking to him in a low, soothing voice. "Good boy. You did so good. Now where are they? Where's your girl?" "I'm here." Lily's voice came out as a croak. "I'm right here." The woman turned. She was older, maybe 45, maybe 50, with cropped hair and a face that looked like it had seen too much and still hadn't looked away. She wore a tactical vest over civilian clothes, and her eyes swept over Lily with the practiced assessment of someone who made life-and-death decisions for a living. "Are you hurt?" "No, but the officers inside are. One of them can't move his legs. The other keeps passing out." "K9s. Alive. One almost died, but I brought him back." The woman's expression shifted. Something that might have been surprise crossed her features before settling into determination. "How many hostiles?" "Two left. There was a third, but I hit him with a rifle. They said they were going to wait until dawn and collapse the mine." "Not anymore, they're not." The woman stood and pressed a button on her radio. "Torres to all units. I need immediate extraction team at my position. 2 officers down, possible spinal injuries. And someone get me those bomb techs on the double." Torres. The name clicked in Lily's mind. The voice on the radio. Daniel Sargent. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" "I didn't know. The call dropped and the signal was gone, and the call lasted 8 seconds. Long enough to hear Blackstone Mine and please hurry. That's all I needed." Torres knelt so she was eye level with Lily. "You did this. You kept them alive. Do you understand what that means?" Lily shook her head. "It means you're a hero. A real one. Not the kind in movies, but the kind that matters." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a kid who didn't want them to die." "That's what a hero is, sweetheart. Someone who didn't want people to die and did something about it." Lights appeared on the road, a convoy of emergency vehicles, their sirens off, but their lights blazing. Behind them, more vehicles. Police cruisers, fire trucks, an ambulance that looked like the most beautiful thing Lily had ever seen. "Can you show me the way in?" Torres asked. "It's tight, you might not fit." "Then I'll make myself fit." They moved to the crack in the rubble. Torres assessed it with a frown, but started removing her tactical vest. "You first. I'll follow." Lily squeezed back through the passage, Torres close behind. The sergeant moved with surprising efficiency, her breathing controlled despite the tight space. They emerged into the chamber together. "Daniel," Torres's voice cracked just slightly. "Marcus." "Sergeant." Daniel tried to sit up and failed. "You're a sight for sore eyes." "Stay down. Medics are 2 minutes out." She moved to Marcus, checking his vitals with practiced hands. "He needs surgery. Now." "I know." "The K9s. Storm's stable. Ranger almost coded, but the girl—" Daniel looked at Lily with something like awe. "The girl brought him back." Torres turned to look at the child standing in the entrance, covered in dust and blood that wasn't hers, holding herself like she might shatter if anyone touched her too hard. "What's your name?" "Lily. Lily Morgan." "Where are your parents?" "Lily. Dead. 3 years ago." "And who takes care of you?" "My grandmother, but she's sick, really sick. I need to get back to her." Torres nodded slowly. "We'll make sure you get home. But first, I need you to do one more thing." "What?" "Tell me everything that happened tonight. Every detail you can remember. Can you do that?" Lily looked at Daniel, at Marcus, at the 2 dogs who had fought so hard to protect their humans. She thought about the men who had tried to kill them, about the explosion that had started all of this, about the voice on the speakers who had promised to bury them all. "Yes," she said, "I can do that." And she did. The medics arrived as she talked, flooding the chamber with light and equipment and the controlled chaos of emergency response. They stabilized Marcus first, strapping him to a backboard with the kind of careful urgency that suggested every second mattered. Daniel went next, his leg freed from the beam that had pinned it for hours. Through it all, Lily kept talking, about the crack in the rubble, about the man she'd knocked unconscious with his own rifle, about the threats and the lies and the moment when she'd decided that she wasn't going to leave no matter what. Torres listened without interrupting. Her face remained neutral, professional, but her eyes told a different story. A story about a sergeant who had seen too many tragedies and not enough miracles. "The man she hit," Torres said to one of the officers. "Find him. He's somewhere in that chamber tied up with his own belt." "Already on it, Sergeant." "And the two who left? Units are searching the perimeter. We've got the roads blocked for 5 miles in every direction." "Good. I want them found before sunrise." Storm was loaded onto a stretcher designed for K9s, his tail wagging weakly as the veterinary technician checked his wounds. Ranger went next, his broken leg splinted his breathing steady for the first time in hours. And then it was just Lily and Torres standing in the chamber that had nearly become a tomb. "You should have run," Torres said quietly. "When you heard the explosion, you should have run home and called for help." "I know." "Why didn't you?" Lily thought about the question, about Shadow leading her through the darkness, about the bark she'd heard through the rubble, about the moment when she'd decided that some things were more important than being safe. "Because no one else was coming," she said finally. "And they needed someone, even if that someone was just me." Torres was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was rough with something she wasn't quite hiding. "My son died 15 years ago. Hiking accident. He was 12. I couldn't reach him in time." She met Lily's eyes. "I've spent 15 years wondering what would have happened if someone else had been there. Someone who wasn't afraid. Someone who just showed up." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You just answered my question." She put her hand on Lily's shoulder gently, like she was afraid the girl might break. "Let's get you home." They emerged from the mine into chaos. Vehicles everywhere, people shouting. Lights so bright they made the darkness seem like a distant memory. Shadow bounded toward Lily the moment he saw her, nearly knocking her off her feet with the force of his greeting. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his fur, breathing in the familiar smell of dirt and dog and home. "Good boy," she whispered. "You did so good." And then, because she couldn't hold it in any longer, she started to cry. The tears didn't last long. Lily had learned early that crying used up energy she couldn't afford to waste, and there was still too much left undone. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and pulled away from Shadow, her eyes scanning the chaos around her. "My grandmother. I need to get to my grandmother." Torres nodded to one of the officers. "Get me a unit to take her home, and send a welfare check ahead. Margaret Morgan lives in the trailer park off Route 7. "Already on it, Sergeant." But before Lily could move toward the waiting cruiser, a hand caught her arm. Daniel, strapped to a stretcher and being loaded into an ambulance, was reaching for her with his good hand. "Lily, wait." She moved to his side. Up close, he looked worse than she'd realized. His skin was gray, his eyes sunken, and the bandage on his head was already soaked through with fresh blood. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. You saved my life. You saved Marcus's life. You saved our dogs." His grip tightened on her wrist. "I'm not going to forget that. Ever. Just get better. That's all I want." The paramedic stepped in. "Sir, we need to move. Now." Daniel released her hand but held her gaze. "I'll find you. When this is over. I promise." Then the ambulance doors closed and he was gone. Torres appeared at Lily's elbow. "Ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." The drive to the trailer park took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of silence, broken only by the crackle of the police radio and Shadow's heavy breathing from the back seat. Lily stared out the window at the darkness rushing past her mind, replaying everything that had happened. The explosion, the crack in the rubble, the feeling of Ranger's chest under her hands pushing until his heart started beating again. The man she'd hit with the rifle. She kept waiting to feel bad about that, to feel guilty or scared or sick. But all she felt was a strange, cold certainty that she'd do it again in a heartbeat. "You're thinking too hard." Torres's voice cut through the silence. "I can hear it from here. I hurt someone tonight. You defended yourself and 2 injured officers against an armed attacker. That's not the same thing." It felt the same. When I swung that rifle, I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to stop him from hurting them. And that makes you feel, I don't know, different, like I'm not the same person I was yesterday. Torres was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You're not. You'll never be that person again. That's what trauma does. It changes you. The question is whether you let it change you for better or worse. How do I know which one? You don't, not right away, but the fact that you're asking means you're already on the right track." The trailer park appeared ahead, a cluster of rusted homes huddled together like they were afraid of the dark. Lily's trailer was at the far end, distinguished by the flower boxes her grandmother had insisted on putting up, even though nothing ever grew in them. The lights were on. That was wrong. Her grandmother always turned the lights off to save electricity. Something's not right. Torres pulled the cruiser to a stop. "Stay here." "No." "Lily." But she was already out of the car, running across the gravel lot with Shadow at her heels. The trailer door was open. Inside, she could hear voices. Strange voices. People who didn't belong. "Grandma!" She burst through the door and stopped cold. Her grandmother was on the floor. 2 paramedics knelt beside her, one pressing an oxygen mask to her face, the other checking her pulse. A neighbor, Mrs. Chen, from 3 trailers down, stood in the corner with her hand over her mouth. "What happened? What's wrong with her?" One of the paramedics looked up. "Are you family?" "I'm her granddaughter. What happened?" "She collapsed about an hour ago. Neighbor heard her fall and called 911. We've stabilized her, but she needs to get to the hospital." Lily pushed past him and knelt beside her grandmother. Margaret's eyes were closed, her face pale and slack. But when Lily took her hand, the old woman stirred. "Lily, baby girl, is that you?" "I'm here, Grandma. I'm right here." "Where were you?" "I woke up and you were gone. I thought, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I had to help someone." Margaret's eyes opened. They were cloudy, unfocused, but they found Lily's face and held on. "You're covered in blood. It's not mine. What did you do?" Lily opened her mouth to answer, but the words wouldn't come. How could she explain what had happened tonight? How could she make her grandmother understand that she'd crawled into a collapsed mine, performed CPR on a dying dog, knocked a man unconscious with a rifle, and talked a police officer through his darkest memories? "I helped some people," she said finally. "They needed me." Margaret's hand tightened on hers. "That's my girl, always taking care of everyone else." She coughed a weak, rattling sound. "I'm proud of you. You know that, right? No matter what happens, I'm so proud." "Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine." "Lily." "You're going to be fine." The paramedics moved in. "We need to transport her now. You can ride along if you want." Lily looked at Torres, who had appeared in the doorway. The sergeant nodded. "Go. I'll meet you at the hospital." "Shadow. I'll take care of him. I promise." Lily climbed into the back of the ambulance and held her grandmother's hand as they raced through the darkness toward Willow Creek Community Hospital. The sirens wailed, the monitors beeped, and Margaret Morgan, who had raised a granddaughter alone, while her own body slowly failed her, drifted in and out of consciousness. "Stay with me," Lily whispered. "Please stay with me." But her grandmother didn't answer. The hospital was chaos. 2 ambulances had arrived at once, Margaret's and the one carrying Marcus Webb. Daniel's ambulance had gone to a larger facility in the next county, where they had specialists who could deal with his injuries. Lily was shuffled to a waiting room while doctors swarmed around her grandmother. A nurse brought her a cup of water she didn't drink and a blanket she didn't need. Someone asked if there was anyone they could call. No, there's no one. No other family friends, a pastor or... I said no. The nurse retreated, leaving Lily alone with her thoughts and her fear and the terrible knowledge that the one person who had always been there for her might not make it through the night. Time passed. She didn't know how much. An hour, maybe 2. People came and went. Voices murmured in the hallway. Somewhere a baby cried. Then Torres appeared, Shadow trotting at her side. How is she? They won't tell me anything. They keep saying the doctor will come talk to me, but no one comes. Torres sat down beside her. Shadow curled up at Lily's feet, his head resting on her shoes. For a moment, no one spoke. Marcus is out of surgery, Torres said finally. They had to remove his spleen, but he's stable. The doctors say he'll walk again thanks to you keeping him conscious. What about Daniel? Still in surgery. His leg was badly broken and there's some internal bleeding they're trying to control. But he's a fighter. He'll make it. And the dogs? Storm is being treated at the emergency vet clinic. A few cuts, some bruised ribs, but nothing permanent. Ranger's leg is in a cast. They said he might have a limp for the rest of his life, but he's alive. Torres paused. Because of you. Lily didn't respond. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a scared little girl whose grandmother was dying and whose whole world was falling apart. The men who did this, she said. Did you catch them? Torres's jaw tightened. One of them, Carl, the one you hit, he's in custody. He's already talking, trying to cut a deal. What about the other 2? Still searching. We know who they work for now. A man named Victor Crane. He owns the mining company that was supposed to have shut down 20 years ago. Supposed to. He never really stopped operations, just moved them underground. Literally. The tunnels under Blackstone Ridge have been used for illegal storage weapons, explosives, things that could bring down buildings or blow up federal facilities. Daniel and Marcus stumbled onto something they were never meant to see. So they tried to kill them, and anyone else who got in the way. Torres turned to face her, including you. Lily absorbed this. The men who had tried to collapse the mine, who had sent someone to finish off 2 injured officers, were still out there, still dangerous, still looking for anyone who might expose their secrets. Am I in danger? We're going to make sure you're not. But I need you to understand something. Victor Crane is not a small-time criminal. He has connections, money, people who will do whatever he tells them. Until we bring him down, you need to be careful. How do you bring down someone like that? Evidence, testimony, and a lot of luck. Torres stood. I'm going to check on your grandmother. Stay here. Don't talk to anyone you don't know. She disappeared down the hallway, leaving Lily alone with Shadow and her thoughts. Victor Crane. The name burned itself into her memory. The man who had tried to kill Daniel and Marcus. The man who had almost buried her alive. The man who was still out there somewhere planning his next move. Lily looked down at Shadow. The dog's eyes were closed, but his ears were alert, still listening for danger, even in his exhaustion. We're not done yet, are we, boy? Shadow's tail thumped once against the floor. No, they weren't done. The doctor came 20 minutes later. She was young, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes and a clipboard she kept checking like it contained secrets she didn't want to share. You're Margaret Morgan's granddaughter. Yes. I'm Dr. Patterson. I've been treating your grandmother for the past few months. Lily recognized the name. The doctor who prescribed the medicine they couldn't afford. The one her grandmother said was too expensive. How is she? Dr. Patterson sat down, which Lily knew was never a good sign. Doctors only sat down when they had bad news. Your grandmother's cancer has spread. We knew it was aggressive, but the tests we ran tonight show that it's moved to her lungs and liver. There's nothing more we can do except keep her comfortable. The words hit Lily like a physical blow. She'd known. Some part of her had always known. But hearing it out loud, spoken by someone in a white coat with a clipboard. How long? Days. Maybe a week if we're lucky. Can I see her? Of course. She's been asking for you. Lily stood on legs that felt like they might collapse at any moment. Shadow rose with her pressing against her side like he knew she needed the support. One more thing, Dr. Patterson said. Your grandmother wanted me to give you this. She said you'd understand. She handed Lily a folded piece of paper. Inside, in her grandmother's shaky handwriting, were 2 sentences. Don't be afraid to let people love you. You deserve it more than anyone I've ever known. The tears came then hot and fast and impossible to stop. Lily clutched the note to her chest and let Shadow guide her down the hallway to her grandmother's room. Margaret was propped up in bed tubes running from her arms, monitors beeping softly beside her. But when she saw Lily, her face lit up with a smile that erased years of pain and exhaustion. There's my girl. Lily crawled onto the bed beside her, careful not to disturb the tubes. Shadow jumped up too, settling at the foot of the bed like he belonged there. The doctor says, I know what the doctor says. I've known for a while now. Margaret stroked her granddaughter's hair. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I'm leaving you. Don't be sorry. You've given me everything. I gave you what I could. It wasn't enough. It was more than enough. Lily pressed her face against her grandmother's shoulder. You taught me how to be brave, how to help people even when it's hard, how to love someone so much it hurts. You taught yourself those things. I just watched. They lay there in silence, grandmother and granddaughter, while Shadow kept watch at their feet. Outside, the hospital hummed with activity. Doctors and nurses and patients moving through the endless cycle of sickness and healing. Lily, Margaret's voice was growing weaker. I need you to promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't close yourself off. Don't push people away because you're afraid of losing them. Let them in. Let them love you. She coughed a harsh sound that made Lily wince. Promise me. I promise. And find somewhere to belong. A real home. Not just a place to sleep, but people who care about you. A family. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You already started tonight. Margaret's hand found Lily's face, cupping her cheek with fingers that trembled with effort. Those officers you saved. The sergeant who brought you here. They see you, Lily. They see how special you are. Let them. Lily didn't know what to say, so she just held her grandmother's hand and listened to her breathe and tried to memorize every detail of this moment, knowing it might be one of the last they'd share. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, baby girl, more than all the stars in the sky. A knock at the door interrupted them. Torres stood in the doorway, her face grave. Lily, I need to talk to you. Can it wait? No, I'm sorry, but it can't. Lily kissed her grandmother's forehead and slipped off the bed. I'll be right back. I know you will. In the hallway, Torres was pacing. Something had changed in the few minutes since they'd last spoken. Her shoulders were tense, her jaw tight. What's wrong? Carl talked, the one you knocked out. He gave us everything, names, locations, the whole operation. Torres stopped pacing. Victor Crane isn't just storing weapons in those tunnels. He's selling them. To domestic terrorists, militia groups, anyone with enough money. And tomorrow he's supposed to make his biggest deal yet. What kind of deal? Enough explosives to bring down a federal building. The buyer is connected to a group that's been on the FBI's watch list for years. Lily felt something cold settle in her stomach. What does this have to do with me? Nothing. You're safe. We have units watching your grandmother's room and we'll make sure you're protected. Torres hesitated. But I need to ask you something. What? Carl mentioned that there's evidence hidden somewhere in the mine. Documents, hard drives, things that could tie Crane to everything he's done for the past 20 years. Without that evidence, he walks. With it, he spends the rest of his life in prison. So go get it. We tried. The collapse made most of the tunnels unstable. Our teams can't get to the area where the evidence is supposedly stored. Torres met her eyes. But there might be another way in. A passage too small for adults. A passage that only someone your size could navigate. The request hung in the air between them. Lily understood what Torres was asking. Go back into that nightmare. Crawl through the darkness again. Risk her life for evidence that might put a monster behind bars. No. Torres shook her head sharply. Forget I said anything. You've done enough. More than enough. I had no right to. I'll do it. Torres stared at her. What? I said I'll do it. When do we leave? Lily, you don't have to. This is not your responsibility. Those men tried to kill Daniel and Marcus. They tried to kill me. They're going to keep hurting people unless someone stops them. Lily's voice was steady even though her heart was pounding. I'm the only one who can fit through those tunnels, so I'm the one who has to go. Your grandmother. My grandmother told me to be brave. She told me to help people even when it's hard. If I walk away now, everything she taught me was a lie. Torres was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was rough. You're 7 years old. I know. This could kill you. I know that too. Why would you risk everything for strangers? Lily thought about the question. About Daniel's face when he talked about Mia. About Marcus's stories of his daughters. About Storm and Ranger and the way they'd protected their humans even when they were hurt. Because nobody helped me when my parents died, she said finally. Nobody came. Nobody cared. I had to figure it out alone. She looked Torres in the eye. I don't want anyone else to feel that way. Not if I can stop it. Torres's expression cracked. For just a second, she looked like a mother who had lost her child all over again. Okay, she whispered. Okay, but we do this my way. You wear a radio. You stay in contact the whole time, and the second something feels wrong, you get out. Deal. Deal. And Lily, yeah. When this is over, we're going to have a long talk about your future, because a kid like you deserves more than a rusted trailer and an uncertain tomorrow. Lily didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and went back to her grandmother's room to say goodbye. Margaret was asleep when she returned. Lily kissed her cheek and whispered, I'll be back, I promise. Then she turned Shadow at her side and walked toward the door, toward the mine, toward the darkness that had almost swallowed her once, toward the only choice she could live with. The drive back to Blackstone Mine felt different in the pale light of early dawn. Lily sat in the back of Torres's cruiser, Shadow pressed against her side, watching the trees blur past. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind was sharp, focused, ready. You don't have to do this. Torres's voice broke the silence. I can call it off. Tell them we couldn't find another way. You'd be lying. I've lied before, for less important reasons. Lily shook her head. If Crane gets away, more people die, more officers, more kids who lose their parents. She met Torres's eyes in the rearview mirror. I can live with being scared. I can't live with that. Torres didn't respond, but her grip on the steering wheel tightened. The staging area near the mine was crowded with vehicles, fire trucks, police cruisers. A van with FBI markings that made everything feel suddenly more real. Men and women in tactical gear moved with purpose, checking equipment, reviewing maps, speaking into radios. A man in a suit approached as they stepped out of the cruiser, middle-aged gray at the temples with the kind of face that had seen too many bad endings. Sergeant Torres, I'm Agent Morrison, FBI. We've been briefed on the situation. Then you know we have a narrow window. Crane's deal goes down tonight. If we don't get that evidence before then, we lose him, I understand. Morrison's eyes dropped to Lily. This is her, the one who's going in. Lily Morgan. She's the only one who can fit through the access tunnels. Morrison crouched down to Lily's level. His eyes were assessing, but not unkind. You know what you're signing up for? Yes. You know you could die in there. I know. And you still want to do this. Lily thought about her grandmother lying in that hospital bed, about Daniel and Marcus fighting for their lives, about Storm and Ranger, loyal, even when loyalty cost them everything. I have to, she said. Nobody else can. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Then he stood and turned to Torres. Get her suited up. Radio flashlight and a GPS beacon in case we lose contact. She goes in, grabs what she can, and gets out. No heroics. Understood. Torres led Lily to a supply truck where a technician was waiting. He fitted her with a small radio that clipped to her collar and a headlamp that strapped around her forehead. The GPS beacon went into her pocket. The tunnel entrance is about 50 meters from the main collapse, he explained. Our geological team found it this morning. It's narrow, barely wide enough for you, but it leads to an inner chamber that wasn't affected by the explosion. That's where Carl said the evidence is stored. How do I find it? Follow the tunnel until it opens up. You'll see filing cabinets, storage boxes, maybe some computers. Grab anything with documents or hard drives. Don't try to be selective, just take what you can carry. Lily nodded, committing every word to memory. One more thing. The technician's voice dropped. If you hear anything moving down there, rocks, shifting beams, creaking, you get out immediately. The whole structure is unstable. One wrong vibration could bring it all down. I understand. Shadow whined and pressed against her leg. Lily knelt and wrapped her arms around his neck. You can't come with me this time, boy. I need you to stay here and wait. The dog's eyes were liquid with worry. He licked her face, his tail tucked between his legs. I'll come back, I promise. She stood and faced the mine entrance. The rubble from the original collapse had been partially cleared, revealing a dark opening that seemed to swallow all light. Ready? Torres asked. No, but let's go anyway. Torres walked her to the entrance where a small crack in the rock face marked the beginning of her journey. It looked impossibly narrow, impossibly dark. Radio check, Torres said into her own device. Lily pressed the button on her collar. Can you hear me? Loud and clear. Remember, anything feels wrong, you call out. We'll find a way to reach you. Okay. Lily. Torres grabbed her arm, forcing her to meet her eyes. Come back. That's not a request. I will. She turned and squeezed into the crack. The darkness closed around her like a fist. Her headlamp cut a pale circle of light ahead, but beyond that circle was nothing. Just black. Just cold. Just the sound of her own breathing echoing off stone. I'm in the tunnel, she said into the radio. Moving forward. Copy that. You're doing great. The passage was tighter than the one she'd used before. She had to turn sideways in places, pressing her back against one wall and her chest against the other. The rock scraped her arms and caught on her clothes. Every few feet she had to stop and catch her breath, but she kept going. The tunnel twisted and turned, sometimes dropping sharply, sometimes climbing. Lily lost all sense of direction. Up, down, left, right. The words lost meaning in the endless dark. How far have I gone? About 40 meters. You're almost there. 40 meters. It had felt like miles. The tunnel began to widen. Lily could move her arms freely again, could straighten her spine for the first time in what felt like hours. Her headlamp revealed a larger space ahead, a chamber carved from the rock lined with metal shelving. I found it. I'm in some kind of storage room. Can you see the evidence? Lily swept her light across the chamber. Filing cabinets lined one wall. Cardboard boxes were stacked against another. In the corner, a desk held a laptop and several external hard drives. Yes, there's a lot of it. Take whatever you can carry. Start with the electronics, they'll have the most data. She moved to the desk and grabbed the laptop, stuffing it into the small backpack they'd given her. The hard drives went next, 3 of them each about the size of a paperback book. She opened the nearest filing cabinet and pulled out handfuls of documents, shoving them into the bag until it wouldn't close. I've got what I can carry. Coming back now. Copy. We'll be waiting. Lily turned toward the tunnel entrance and froze. A man stood in the shadows at the far end of the chamber. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face like granite and eyes that held no mercy. Hello, little girl. Her blood turned to ice. Who are you? I'm the man you've been causing so much trouble for. He stepped into the light. Victor Crane. And you have something that belongs to me. Lily's hand went to the radio. Torres, There's someone here. Crane is... The man moved faster than she thought possible. His hand closed around her wrist, yanking the radio from her collar and crushing it beneath his boot. None of that. His voice was calm, almost gentle. We're going to have a little conversation, you and I. Let me go. Soon. First, you're going to tell me how you found this place, who told you about the tunnel, and what exactly you've already shared with those officers outside. I'm not telling you anything. Crane's grip tightened until Lily gasped with pain. You're 7 years old. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I know you tried to kill 2 police officers. I know you're selling weapons to terrorists. I know you're a monster. Something flickered in Crane's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or something darker. You've got spirit, I'll give you that. He released her wrist and took a step back. Your grandmother is Margaret Morgan, isn't she? Lives in that trailer park off Route 7, dying of cancer from what I hear. Lily's heart stopped. How do you know that? I know everything about everyone in this town. It's how I've stayed in business for 20 years. He smiled, and the expression made Lily's skin crawl. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me that backpack. Then you're going to walk out of this mine and tell the police you didn't find anything. And in exchange, I'll make sure your grandmother's last days are comfortable, painless. You're lying. Maybe. But can you afford to take that chance? Lily looked at the backpack in her hands, at the evidence that could put this man away forever, at the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. No. Crane's expression hardened. No. My grandmother told me to be brave, to help people even when it's hard. Lily clutched the backpack tighter. I'm not giving you anything. Then I'm afraid you won't be leaving this mine. He reached for her. Lily ducked under his arm and ran. The tunnel entrance was 10 feet away. She could make it. She had to make it, but Crane was faster. His hand caught the strap of her backpack, yanking her backward. She stumbled, hit the stone floor hard enough to knock the wind out of her. Stupid child. He loomed over her, his shadow blocking out the light from her headlamp. Lily scrambled backward, her hand closing around a loose rock. You could have walked away, Crane said. You could have had a normal life. Instead, you chose to be a hero. I chose to do what's right. And look where it got you. He reached down. Lily swung the rock. It connected with the side of his head with a sound like breaking pottery. Crane staggered, cursing, blood streaming from a gash above his ear. Lily didn't wait. She was on her feet and running, diving into the tunnel entrance, squeezing through the narrow passage with every ounce of strength she had left. Torres! She screamed. Help! He's coming! She could hear Crane behind her cursing, struggling to fit through the passage that was too narrow for his broad shoulders. Rocks scraped and crumbled as he forced his way forward. I'm coming for you, little girl. You can't run forever. The tunnel seemed longer, going back. Longer and darker and tighter. Lily's lungs burned. Her arms were scraped raw. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. Then ahead she saw it. Light. Real light. Daylight. She burst out of the tunnel entrance and collapsed into Torres's arms. He's in there. Crane is in there. Torres didn't hesitate. She handed Lily to another officer and drew her weapon, aiming at the tunnel entrance. FBI. Come out with your hands up. Silence. Then a sound. Rumbling. Deep and low and getting louder. Everyone back. The tunnel's collapsing. They scrambled away from the entrance as the rumbling grew to a roar. Dust and debris exploded from the crack in the rock face. The ground shook. Trees trembled. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the noise stopped. The tunnel was gone, buried under tons of rock and earth. Did he? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Is he? Torres moved cautiously toward the collapsed entrance. She listened, waited. Nothing. If he was in there, he's not coming out. Lily sat down hard, her legs refusing to hold her any longer. Shadow was at her side in an instant, licking her face, whimpering with relief. She wrapped her arms around him and held on. The evidence. Agent Morrison appeared beside her. Did you get it? She held up the backpack still clutched in her white-knuckled grip. I got it. Morrison took the bag and opened it. His eyes widened as he pulled out the laptop, the hard drives, the documents. This is... He shook his head. This is everything. Names, dates, transactions. Every deal Crane ever made documented and cataloged. Enough to put him away. Enough to put away everyone he ever worked with. This is going to blow the case wide open. Torres helped Lily to her feet. It's over. You did it. But Lily shook her head. It's not over. My grandmother is still dying. And I don't know what happens to me after. She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say the words out loud. Torres was quiet for a moment. Then she put her hand on Lily's shoulder. We'll figure it out. Together. I promise. The drive back to the hospital was quiet. Lily sat in the back seat with Shadow watching the sun rise over the mountains. Everything looked different in the daylight. Softer. More hopeful. She didn't feel hopeful. She felt exhausted, terrified, unsure of what came next. The hospital corridors were busy when they arrived. Nurses rushed past. Doctors conferred in doorways. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air. Lily walked to her grandmother's room on autopilot, pushed open the door, stepped inside, The bed was empty. Her heart stopped. No. She spun around, searching for anyone who could tell her what had happened. A nurse was approaching her, face carefully neutral. Miss Morgan. Where is she? Where's my grandmother? I'm so sorry. She passed about an hour ago. It was peaceful. She wasn't in any pain. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Lily had just talked to her, had just promised to come back, Her legs gave out. Torres caught her before she hit the floor. Shadow pressed against her, whining, trying to comfort her in the only way he knew how. She wanted me to give you this. The nurse held out a folded piece of paper. She wrote it just before. She said you'd understand. Lily took the paper with trembling hands, unfolded it, read the words through a blur of tears. My dearest Lily, don't be sad. I'm going somewhere the pain can't follow. I'll be with your parents again, watching over you from a place where love never fades. You are my greatest gift, my unexpected miracle. Every day with you was a blessing I didn't deserve. Now it's your turn to live, to love, to find the family you were always meant to have. Don't close your heart. Don't be afraid. You are brave and beautiful and so much stronger than you know. I believe in you. I will always believe in you. All my love forever and always. Grandma Lily pressed the letter to her chest and let the tears come. Great racking sobs that shook her whole body. Torres held her, Shadow curled around her feet, and somewhere she knew her grandmother was finally at peace. The next few hours passed in a haze. Paperwork, phone calls, decisions that seemed to make themselves. Torres handled most of it, speaking to social workers and hospital administrators, while Lily sat in a chair by the window, staring at nothing. There's a foster home in the next county, a social worker was saying. They have an opening. She could be placed as early as tomorrow. No. The word came from Torres, firm, final. Sergeant, I understand you've formed an attachment, but protocol requires... I said no. Torres moved to stand between Lily and the social worker. This girl has been through more in the last 24 hours than most people experience in a lifetime. She saved 2 police officers. She nearly died. She lost the only family she had left. Her voice cracked just slightly. She's not going to some foster home where she'll be just another file in a cabinet. Then what do you suggest? Torres looked at Lily, at the small broken girl curled in the chair with a letter clutched to her chest and a dog pressed against her side. She's coming home with me. The social worker blinked. Sergeant, that's not temporary custody, emergency placement. Call it whatever you need to call it to make the paperwork work. But she's coming home with me. A long silence. Then the social worker sighed. I'll make some calls, but this is highly irregular. I don't care. When the social worker left, Torres knelt in front of Lily's chair. "Hey, look at me." Lily raised her eyes. They were red-rimmed, swollen, empty of everything except exhaustion. "Did you mean it about taking me home?" "I meant it." "Why?" Torres was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was rough with emotion she wasn't quite hiding. "Because 15 years ago, I lost my son. And every day since I've wondered what he would have become, what kind of man he would have grown into." She touched Lily's cheek gently. "And then I met a little girl who crawled into a collapsed mine to save strangers, who fought off a killer with a rock, who lost everything and still found the strength to keep going. I don't feel strong. That's what makes you strong." Real courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. Lily looked at Shadow, then back at Torres. "What about my dog? He comes too, obviously." For the first time since her grandmother died, something that might have been hope flickered in Lily's eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Torres helped her to her feet. "Let's go home." The first week in Torres's house felt like living in someone else's dream. Lily kept waiting to wake up to find herself back in the rusted trailer with her grandmother's cough echoing through the thin walls. But every morning she opened her eyes to a real bedroom with real curtains and Shadow curled at the foot of a real bed. "Breakfast is ready." Torres's voice drifted up from the kitchen. "If you don't hurry, Shadow's going to eat your eggs." Lily threw off the covers and padded downstairs, still wearing the pajamas Torres had bought her 3 days ago. They had cartoon dogs on them. Torres had apologized for the design, saying the store was out of plain ones, but Lily loved them more than anything she'd owned in years. "Sleep okay?" "Better. The nightmares are getting shorter." Torres nodded and slid a plate of scrambled eggs across the table. Shadow sat at attention nearby, his eyes tracking every movement of the fork. "Daniel called this morning. He's being released from the hospital today." Lily's heart jumped. "Really? He's okay?" 3 surgeries and 6 weeks of physical therapy, but yes, he's okay." Torres sat down across from her. "He wants to see you, if you're up for it." "I'm up for it." The drive to the county hospital took 45 minutes. Lily spent most of it staring out the window, her hand resting on Shadow's head. The dog had become her constant companion, following her from room to room, sleeping outside her door when nightmares woke her screaming. Daniel was sitting up in bed when they arrived, his leg encased in a complicated brace, his arm still bandaged. But his eyes were clear, and when he saw Lily, his face broke into a smile that made him look 10 years younger. "There she is, the hero of Willow Creek." "I'm not a hero." "The newspapers disagree. The governor disagrees. Pretty much everyone disagrees except you." Lily climbed onto the chair beside his bed, her feet dangling above the floor. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck, backed over, and then hit again." He shifted position, wincing slightly. "But I'm alive, thanks to you. Thanks to Storm. He's the one who kept barking until I found you." At the sound of his name, a familiar German shepherd lifted his head from a dog bed in the corner. Storm's tail wagged weakly, and he tried to stand before a nurse gently pushed him back down. "Easy, boy. You're still healing too." Lily crossed to the dog bed and knelt beside Storm. The German shepherd licked her face, his tail thumping against the cushion. "Hey, buddy, I missed you." Storm whined and pressed his muzzle against her hand. His eyes were the same ones she remembered from that night in the mine, exhausted but loyal, hurt but unbroken. "The vet says he'll make a full recovery," Daniel said. "Might have some stiffness in his back legs, but nothing that'll keep him off the job. He's going back to work. We both are. Eventually." Daniel's expression grew serious. "But first, I need to thank you properly, for everything you did." "You already thanked me." "Not like this." He reached into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out a small box. "Open it." Lily took the box and lifted the lid. Inside, resting on a bed of dark velvet, was a medal. Bronze, shaped like a star, with an inscription she had to squint to read. "For exceptional bravery in service to others," she read aloud. "What is this?" "It's the civilian equivalent of what they give to officers who go above and beyond. The department wanted you to have it." "But I'm just a kid." You're the kid who saved 2 officers and their K9 partners, who crawled into a collapsed mine twice, who faced down a killer and lived to tell about it. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. You're the bravest person I've ever met, Lily, and I've met a lot of brave people. Lily stared at the metal, not sure what to say. It felt heavy in her hands, heavier than metal should feel. I don't know if I deserve this. You do. Trust me. Torres appeared in the doorway. Ready to go. We've got one more stop to make. Lily looked at Daniel. Will I see you again? Count on it. Storm and I are going to be checking in on you regularly. Make sure Torres is feeding you right. I heard that, Torres called from the hallway. Daniel grinned. You were supposed to. The second stop was the county courthouse, a grand building with marble columns and American flags flanking the entrance. Lily had never been inside before, had never had a reason to. What are we doing here? You'll see. Torres led her through security down a long corridor and into a courtroom packed with people. Lily recognized some of them Agent Morrison from the FBI, the social worker who had tried to send her to foster care, several officers from the Willow Creek Police Department, and in the front row, Marcus Webb. He was in a wheelchair, his face pale but alert. When he saw Lily, his eyes lit up. There's our girl. Lily ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. He hugged her back, his grip strong despite everything he'd been through. You're here. You're really here. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. He pulled back and looked at her. You look good. Torres taking care of you. She makes me eat vegetables. The horror. A bailiff called the room to order, and everyone found their seats. Lily sat between Torres and Marcus' shadow, lying at her feet. At the front of the courtroom, a judge in black robes settled into her chair. We're here today for the sentencing phase of United States versus Carl Matthews, Robert Flynn, and the estate of Victor Crane. Lily's breath caught. The estate of Victor Crane. That meant Victor Crane was recovered from the collapsed tunnel 3 days ago, Torres whispered. He didn't survive. Something complicated moved through Lily's chest. Relief. Guilt. A strange kind of grief for a man who had tried to kill her. Is it wrong that I don't feel sad? No, sweetheart. It's human. The judge continued. Based on evidence recovered from the Blackstone mine, as well as testimony from former associates, this court finds the defendants guilty on all counts. Illegal weapons trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder of 2 police officers. Carl Matthews sat in the defendant's box, his face blank. He was the one Lily had hit with the rifle, the one who had been sent to kill them all. Mr. Matthews, you are hereby sentenced to 45 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Carl didn't react, just stared straight ahead like he'd already accepted his fate. Mr. Flynn, you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Robert Flynn, one of the 2 men who had waited outside the mine, lowered his head into his hands. The assets of Victor Crane's estate, valued at approximately $47 million, will be seized by the federal government and distributed to victims of his criminal enterprise. Agent Morrison stood. Your Honor, if I may. Proceed. The FBI would like to formally recognize the contributions of Miss Lily Morgan to this investigation. Without her courage and determination, this case would never have been solved. These men would still be free, and 2 of our finest officers would be dead. The judge looked at Lily. Miss Morgan, please stand. Lily's legs felt like jelly as she rose from her seat. Every eye in the courtroom was on her. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and never be seen again. On behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the United States Department of Justice, I hereby commend you for your extraordinary service. Your actions have saved lives, exposed corruption, and reminded us all that heroism has no age requirement. The courtroom erupted in applause. Lily stood frozen, overwhelmed, until Torres gently guided her back into her seat. Breathe, Torres whispered. Just breathe. After the sentencing, people swarmed around Lily. Reporters wanted interviews. Officers wanted to shake her hand. Someone from the governor's office mentioned something about a ceremony at the state capitol. It was too much. Way too much. I need air. Torres cut a path through the crowd and led her outside to a small courtyard behind the building. Shadow trotted beside them, his presence a comfort in the chaos. You okay? No, I don't know. Maybe. Torres sat down on a bench and patted the space beside her. Lily sat. Shadow lay at their feet. It gets easier. The attention, I mean. Eventually they'll find another story and move on. What if I don't want them to move on? What if I want to matter? Torres looked at her. You matter. Not because of what you did in that mine. Not because of medals or ceremonies or newspaper articles. You matter because of who you are. Who am I? You're Lily Morgan, a 7-year-old girl who lost everything and still found room in her heart to save strangers. A kid who talks to her dog like he understands every word. A person who makes my empty house feel like a home again. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I miss my grandmother. I know you do. She would have liked you. Yeah, Torres's voice was rough. I would have liked her too. They sat in silence for a while, watching clouds drift across the autumn sky. Shadow rolled onto his back, begging for belly rubs that Lily absently provided. Elena. Torres blinked. It was the first time Lily had used her first name. Yes. What happens now with me, I mean? Am I going to stay with you, or we need to talk about that? Torres turned to face her fully. The temporary custody arrangement ends in 2 weeks. After that, we have options. What kind of options? You could go into the foster system. There are good families out there, people who would love you. Lily's heart sank. Oh. Or, Torres paused, gathering herself. Or you could stay with me, permanently. What do you mean? I mean adoption. I've already started the paperwork. It'll take time, background checks, home visits, about 1,000 forms. But if it's what you want... Lily stared at her. The word wouldn't come. Her throat had closed up completely. Lily, say something. You want to adopt me? More than anything I've wanted in 15 years. But why I'm just... You're not just anything. You're extraordinary. And I know I'm not your grandmother. I know I can never replace her. But I can give you a home, a family, a place where you belong. Lily threw her arms around Torres's neck and held on like she might drown if she let go. Yes, I want that. I want that so much. Torres hugged her back, and for the first time since her grandmother died, Lily felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. 3 months later, the adoption was finalized. The ceremony took place in the same courtroom where Carl Matthews had been sentenced, but it looked different now. Flowers on the judge's bench, balloons tied to the chairs, faces full of joy instead of grim determination. Daniel stood near the front, leaning on a cane, but standing on his own 2 feet. Storm sat beside him, a blue bow tied around his collar. Marcus was there too, out of his wheelchair now, Rebecca beside him with Emma and Sophie bouncing excitedly between them. Order in the court. The judge banged her gavel, but she was smiling. We're gathered here today for something much more pleasant than my usual business. Lily stood before the bench in a new dress Torres had bought her. Shadow sat at her feet in his own blue bow, his tail sweeping the floor. Elena Torres, do you solemnly swear to accept Lily Morgan as your legal daughter, to provide for her, protect her, and love her as your own flesh and blood? I do. Torres's voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. And Lily Morgan, do you accept Elena Torres as your legal mother, to honor her, respect her, and allow her into your heart? Lily looked at the woman who had saved her, who had taken her in when no one else would, who had given her a home and a future and a reason to believe in second chances. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Montana, I hereby declare that Lily Morgan is now and forever the legal daughter of Elena Torres. The judge smiled. You may hug your mom. Lily crashed into Elena's arms. The courtroom erupted in applause. Shadow barked happily. And somewhere Lily knew her grandmother was watching. The celebration afterward was small, but perfect. Elena's house was full of people. Officers from the department neighbors. Lily was still getting to know the Webb family with their daughters, running circles around Shadow. Sophie, still in her T-Rex costume, despite the formality of the occasion, tugged on Lily's dress. "Are you really going to be our neighbor now?" "I guess so." "Cool. Want to see my dinosaur impression?" Before Lily could answer, Sophie launched into a surprisingly accurate velociraptor screech that sent Emma running and made the adults laugh. "She's been practicing," Marcus said, appearing beside Lily with a cup of punch. "For weeks. I think she wanted to impress you. She doesn't need to impress me. Tell her that." Daniel joined them, Storm padding faithfully at his side. The German Shepherd immediately pressed against Lily, seeking affection that she happily provided. "How does it feel? Being official?" "Weird, good weird, but weird. That'll pass. Eventually, it'll just feel normal." "Is that what happened with you and Storm?" Daniel looked down at his partner. The dog gazed back with absolute devotion. "Pretty much. First few months, I wasn't sure either of us knew what we were doing. Now I can't imagine life without him." Storm's tail wagged. "He knows you're talking about him." "He always knows." Elena appeared with a cake balanced precariously in her hands. "Someone want to help me before I drop this?" The cake was shaped like a star, with "Welcome Home Lily" written in blue frosting. It was lopsided, and the letters were uneven, and it was the most beautiful thing Lily had ever seen. "You made this?" "Don't sound so surprised. I can bake." "Can she?" Lily whispered to Daniel. "No, absolutely not, but don't tell her I said that." They gathered around the table while Elena lit candles and everyone sang. Lily closed her eyes and made a wish, though she wasn't sure what else she could possibly ask for. Everything she'd ever wanted was right here in this room. She blew out the candles. Everyone cheered. Shadow tried to eat a piece of cake and had to be gently redirected. As the celebration wound down and guests began to leave, Lily slipped outside to the back porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Shadow followed her, settling at her feet with a contented sigh. "Hey!" Elena sat down beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. They just watched the day end together. "Your grandmother would be proud of you." "You think so?" "I know so. She raised an incredible kid." Lily leaned against Elena's shoulder. "I'm scared sometimes that this will all go away, that I'll wake up and it'll just be me and Shadow again." "That's not going to happen." "How do you know?" "Because I made a promise, and I don't break my promises." Elena put her arm around Lily. "You're stuck with me now, for better or worse. Mostly better. We'll aim for that." The back door opened and Daniel stepped out. Storm and Shadow immediately began their greeting ritual, sniffing, circling that subtle dog communication humans could never quite decode. "Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to say goodbye before we head out." Lily stood and hugged him. "Thank you. For everything. Thank you for saving my life." "We're even then." "Not even close." He pulled back and looked at her seriously. "You ever need anything at all, you call me. Day or night. Understood?" "Understood." "Good." He ruffled her hair. "Take care of your mom. She pretends to be tough, but she's a softie underneath." "I heard that," Elena called. "You were supposed to." Daniel left with Storm, their silhouettes disappearing into the gathering dusk. Marcus and his family followed soon after, Sophie waving furiously from the car window until they turned the corner. Then it was just Elena, Lily, and Shadow. "What do you want to do now?" Elena asked. Lily considered the question. She could watch TV, read a book, play in the yard with Shadow. For the first time in her life, she had choices. Real choices. "Can we just sit here together? We can do anything you want." They sat on the porch steps, watching the stars emerge one by one. Shadow stretched out between them, his warmth a bridge connecting them both. "Elena, yeah, I love you." The words came out before Lily could stop them. She hadn't planned to say it, hadn't known she was ready. But there it was, floating in the evening air, true and terrifying and absolutely real. Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick, I love you too, sweetheart. More than I know how to say. Lily smiled. Her first real smile in months. Maybe years. Above them, the stars kept appearing. Thousands of them. Millions. Each one a light in the darkness, a reminder that even the blackest night couldn't last forever. And Lily, who had lost so much and found so much more, finally understood what her grandmother had been trying to tell her. Family wasn't just about blood. It wasn't about sharing a name or a history or DNA. Family was about choosing each other, about staying when it would be easier to leave, about loving someone so fiercely that nothing, not death, not distance, not even the cruelest twist of fate could break that bond. She had found her family in the strangest of places, in a collapsed mine, in a hospital room, in the quiet courage of a sergeant who had lost her son and found something worth living for again. And now, sitting on the porch of her forever home with her mother beside her and her dog at her feet, Lily Morgan knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never be alone again. The end. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truth. Sometimes the forgotten ones become the found. And sometimes in our darkest moments, grace arrives not in thunder or angels, but in the quiet loyalty of a 7-year-old girl who refused to leave anyone behind. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that goodness still exists. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if you believe that every act of courage plants a seed of hope, subscribe to our channel so we can keep spreading light together. Because heroes aren't born. They're made in the moments when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things. And Lily Morgan, orphan, turned daughter, stranger, turned family, child, turned hero, proved that the greatest power in the world isn't strength or wealth or fame. It's love.